I was really happy to have you on here because as I mentioned, in my first email, obviously you're not, a woman or feminine, but it is important to have allies and, men speak to this too as almost proof or, evidence that, yeah, it's not just women saying like, this is for everyone. This is for us too. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for coming on for that.
Very happy to do that. I'm very happy to do that. And I have to say, I find the idea that Stoicism is distinctively male, and in particular that it's distinctively macho male,
Oh.
is really ridiculous. It's just an absurd misinterpretation of the theory. And I guess it is. I think you in some of you yeah, it's a puzzle really. Well, if you come to it from the ancient evidence, it's a puzzle why anyone should think that. I think there are some possible answers apart from just misrepresentation, which of course happens all the time.
Welcome to the Feminine Stoic. This upcoming book features 365 women who naturally embody the essence of Stoicism, without having necessarily heard of it. The idea was inspired by The Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday. I had CPTSD, and my friend John told me to check it out. I was like, no, thank you. I thought it was something just for strong, silent men, and I honestly love being girly. He said it has nothing to do with gender, and he sent me a copy of the book. Well, a free PDF version anyways. I forgot about it for a year, then I reached such a low point that I figured, why not? Of course, I ended up loving it, and it actually did change my life. I'm still not the best at being stoic, but it's helped a lot. That being said, I easily saw that all 365 days of the Daily Stoic feature men. And while that's great, I wanted to bring this book to women and girls too, since Stoicism is for everyone. I'm happy to have Chris Gill here. Christopher Gill is an emeritus professor at the University of Exeter in England, focusing on ancient philosophy, notably Stoicism. He was a co-editor of Phronesis, one of the leading journals in ancient philosophy. Much of his recent work focuses on Stoic ethics as a practical guide for life, and he contributes to Modern Stoicism, where he was one of the co-founders in the Aurelius Foundation, where he serves as an advisor. He also edited the Oxford World's Classics editions of Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus, making these Stoic classics accessible to a wider audience. He has a number of books that he wrote and published himself. Professor Gill likes swimming, hill walking, and he's the father of 4 children and a grandfather several times over. So welcome, Chris. Happy to have you.
6 grandchildren. So it's increasing number. Okay.
Wow, 6. Okay.
Press on, Chris. It was nothing. Press on.
Very cute, I'm sure. So this one is by Seneca from Moral Letters. When philosophy is wielded with arrogance and stubbornly, it is the cause for the ruin of many.
So this passage is an interesting one. So it shows that philosophy by itself doesn't make you a good person. It's the way you use philosophy. That's how you respond to philosophy. So let me talk a little bit about what role philosophy's had in my life. So I've studied philosophy for many years and studied Stoicism for many years, and for at least some of those, I've tried to think seriously about the effect it had and how it could benefit my life. And this was particularly important in 2010 when I lost my wife, who's at 52. She was 12 years younger than me. And I had to come to terms with this. I had to deal with that. And that made me ask the question, well, what's the use of all this studying ancient philosophy? What's the use of studying Stoicism, Epicureanism, and so on, if they don't help you when you're going through some of the most difficult times in your life? So that I realized that it wasn't just enough to be, like very good at knowing about philosophy. That could just become a form of arrogance. It's also got to be a way of helping you lead a better life. And I think that really brought it home to me that this stuff matters. It can matter very much. So, and Stoicism, of course, is very good at that because Stoicism talks a lot about death and coming to terms with death and accepting death and accepting that other people who you love, die. So I think that that was a very important lesson for me and one that underpinned a lot of my involvement in modern Stoicism. Okay, so that's the first. So that's something on the first passage.
Yeah. I'm glad that, you were able to utilize Stoicism to help you with the grief. And yeah, I'm sure it's many years later, but yeah, sorry for your loss.
Yes, it's many years later, but yeah, these things stay with you.
Yeah, I'm sure she was a lovely woman. As you move forward along the path of reason, people will stand in your way. They will never be able to keep you from doing what's sound, so don't let them knock out your goodwill for them. Keep a steady watch on both fronts, not only for well-based judgments and actions, but also for gentleness with those who would obstruct our path or create other difficulties. For getting angry is also a weakness, just as much as abandoning the task or surrendering under panic, by Marcus Aurelius, also from Meditations. Yes.
Sure. Well, I think this is an interesting passage because probably like lots of scholars, I'm quite sort of driven. I'm very powerfully motivated to getting what I want to, working out a line of argument, writing an article or writing a book, getting on with it. And it's very easy under those circumstances to treat other people, even people you care about, as just getting in your way, an obstacle. And of course, not only do they get in your way, they might make demands on you, emotional demands, or they might, they have lives too.
Yeah.
And they have cares and concerns. So I think I've had to, and there's a particular irony in this because sometimes what I've been working on is on ethical philosophy, about how to treat people properly, and then on the application of this. And there's a sort of irony if you're studying all these, these ideas, and actually at the same time you're saying, "Get out of my way! You're annoying me." So I think I think it's been a real lesson to me, and also one thing that I feel I've learned more, or tried to learn more through modern Stoicism, is it's putting these ideas into practice in the very process of studying and thinking about them. And that's what one's trying to do, because we only have one life. You can only do things once, that it's so. And if you're not doing them now, that you may never have another chance. So I think this is a good passage to make you aware of the importance of putting into practice the lessons that you're trying to convey and to learn. And I agree, particularly with the point. I don't think getting anger is a particular problem of mine, but you can get impatient. I think impatience, irritation more is something I would be more. Yeah, I don't think I have many rages, but I think, but there's a kind of impatience. But that's just as bad because it's dismissing other people. And as I say, they have lives and concerns too. Yeah. So I think this is that's. So I think again the process of engaging in modern Stoicism, applied Stoicism, has helped me to think more about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it.
Nice. Thank you for sharing. You had translated versions of Epictetus's work and Marcus Aurelius's.
Yeah, to be precise, I've mainly edited. I have done some translation. I translated the first half of Marcus Aurelius Meditations in a hardback book, but with the world's classics, I edited them and wrote notes. So
okay.
I worked with a former student of mine who we collaborated together.
Oh, okay. You edited, those works, and then you translated other works.
And I did translate Marcus Aurelius. With Marcus, yes, I could say a little bit about the translation of Marcus. It was in general, I have done a number of translations. I've translated Plato's Symposium. I think what I tried to do is to find in modern English an equivalent for the Greek, to find, so as it were, if Marcus was around today, how would he express these ideas? So I try to write in something that looks like English, modern English. It's not enough just to translation that looks like sort of something that doesn't really look like English, and no one would say. So I try to write in the equivalent of it and try to bring home the quality of it, I suppose. And with Marcus Aurelius, of course, it's very remarkable. His Greek style is very remarkable. It's got a sort of poetic quality, although some of it's quite strange. It's got a kind of oracular, poetic quality, which I did try and convey. So that's what I tried to do. The other thing I would say is that when you're translating, it's very important to read it aloud, because if it doesn't sound right, it probably isn't right. It probably isn't having the effect it does. So I have thought a bit about translation, although it's not my primary aim. I'm more see myself as an interpreter and commentator.
Yeah, with your background in, ancient philosophy and Stoicism, like why did you want to bring it, from the ancient texts and past into, kind of what we can see and apply today?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are a lot of other people are doing this, but also there was encouragement at that particular moment, and still is, in British universities, encouraging people to do that, to show that your work has impact, that it can have an effect on people. So which that meant there was funding available for the workshops that I had, and for the first year of our building up modern Stoicism and also I was encouraged by, I mean, I tell you who was quite an important influence, which might surprise you. One of my graduate students, Patrick Usher, he was a young man, but he knew a lot more than me about applied philosophy and how you could, I mean, he, for instance, advised me on who I should ask to the Stoic workshop that I had in 2012. He knew better than I did. And Patrick Usher was the person who thought up the idea of live like a Stoic for a week, and which is we've gone on practicing in modern Stoicism since then. And the idea of a blog of ongoing blog of articles and a regular conference. So he was, in a way, yeah, you can learn from those younger than yourself with other ideas, and so that was good. But again, there was this underlying idea, which I mentioned in connection with the loss of my wife, that I asked myself, what is the point? What is the point of acquiring, as it were, all this understanding if you don't try to put it into practice and make some use of it? Otherwise, and the Stoics themselves talk about this. They talk about the emptiness of just, people who are empty, full of empty sound. They're intellectuals who just go around blasting off. And what does it come to? What does it amount to? How does it relate to their lives? How does it relate to their role in society? So these are very important things to do. And if people who study philosophy don't do them, it leaves, it impoverishes the larger dialogue in our society.
Yeah.
Which certainly could do with as much enriching as it can have.
Yeah, Stoicism can help so many people, and it's great.
And I mean, it's been a revelation to me, I have to say, how much philosophy can help people. I mean, time and time again, people have explained how that studying Stoicism has helped them through very difficult times, really difficult times with their personal life, with illnesses and people who have a sense of a lack of meaning in their lives, a lack of a framework. And I'm really humbled, actually, often when I hear the stories that people give. For instance, in the Stoicon, we do the Modern Stoicism Stoicon, and there are what they call lightning talks, short talks by people for about 5 minutes, where they relate practice of Stoicism to their lives. And I'm humbled by the power of philosophy.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. It can help so many people like overcome challenges. And that's the point of Stoicism. Okay. And from that conference, you mentioned you started Modern Stoicism with several others. I'm curious, of course, heard of Ryan Holiday. Have you communicated with him or talked with him?
Well, I have met Ryan Holiday. Yes, people sometimes ask me about Ryan Holiday. I have met him. He came. He was the keynote speaker at a Stoicon, one of our regular Stoic conferences. This was an in-person one in New York, organized by Massimo Pigliucci. And I met him. I met him at a social gathering and had a nice chat with him. And he gave a talk on Marcus Aurelius. Now, I know that Ryan has a bit of a reputation for what one might call Silicon Valley Stoicism. That's right. But and some people have questioned really his sincerity, I think. I think I'm fair in saying. But he struck me, I have to say, as a very straightforward and sincere person. Now, it's true, I have looked a little bit of his work. It seems to me mainly just presenting Marcus Aurelius, presenting Stoic ideas.
It is very focused on Marcus Aurelius, yeah.
I don't really get this sort of Silicon Valley idea. I don't know how it's used. I haven't gone into it in great depth, but he seems to me, I think a lot of people have found Ryan very helpful and they find his books helpful. And that's fine for me. But I have to say, I've learned more personally. I've learned more, not from Ryan, but from people like Donald Robertson, who wrote a wonderful book called Stoicism and the Art of Happiness, and from collaborating, working with Donald and Tim LeBon in our preparing the Stoic Week materials. And I've learned a lot from collaborating with Brittany Pollard when we were writing our book together in Stoic Ethics. And I would write something on virtue and happiness, and then she would write another section where she talked about what's involved in putting this into practice. And I feel that I have learnt more in this collaborative activity. I think dialogue and collaborative activities is a very good way of learning from people.
And yeah, Ryan Holiday, I think, is focused more on, I don't want to say pop culture, but entrepreneurs, athletes, maybe Silicon Valley, whereas I think you work a lot with academics and from that end and bringing it to the modern world. So maybe that's...
Stoicism isn't about success in the worldly sense.
Yes.
It isn't. No. I mean, they stress again and again, the Stoics will stress that fame is empty. Wealth is it's not important. It's preferred indifferent. But so if I got the impression that someone was really interested, I'm not saying Ryan does, but if Stoicism is just used as a way of a kind of training you up so that you become a more effective entrepreneur and make more money and become more famous, that's not Stoicism.
That's not the foundation or the premise of Stoicism.
It's something else. It's just something else. It really is.
Yeah.
And so I haven't got much time for that. But as I say, the people I'm most familiar with and who write more very illuminatingly about Stoicism and sometimes other philosophies are not saying that. They're talking about this serious business of really trying to apply philosophy in all aspects of your life, to deal with your relationships, to deal with your difficulties, to deal with with thinking seriously about your life.
Yeah, it's like the proper way to live. Yeah, and a lot of the people who maybe leverage Stoicism from Ryan Holiday's work, it may not be him condoning it or even advocating for it to make you, wealthy or successful, but it could have just been, those internet forums who just kind of take things their own way. So it may not be his fault either that, some people have to.
As I say, in my experience of him, he seemed to be entirely sincere but as I say, I've not made a great study of his work, but he seemed to me quite sincere. And you're right. Yes, people use if you are successful and well known, people use your work in different ways.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious because I was introduced to Stoicism through my friend, through Ryan Holiday's book. It helped me greatly. And it's like a very bite-sized, introduction. And
Yes.
you co-founded Modern Stoicism. I was just curious about that tie since I hadn't seen, too
Yes.
much. So nice. Okay, that's
No, I know a lot of people have found it, and the way it's broken down into day by day advice, people find very helpful. Yeah.
so. As you know, this is for the feminine Stoic. So, want to hear your thoughts. Why do you think Stoicism is for women too? Do you think it's a masculine trait? And yeah, how can it be for everyone, including women?
Sure. Okay, so if you read ancient Stoicism, I mean, if you look primarily at the ancient sources, there's nothing in it that would make you think it was necessarily for men rather than women, I don't think. I mean, it's very universal. The thing about Stoicism, it's extremely universal. It talks about what a good life is for a human being, man or woman or child, in fact. It tries to identify really important common features, which, like being rational, being sociable. It talks about the virtues, the four virtues of wisdom, courage, moderation, and justice. These are universal. The Stoics see these as universal qualities. They apply to all human beings. Now, the Stoics didn't, and the ancient Stoics don't talk very much about male virtues and female virtues. They just talk about the virtues, and you could apply them in every way. But there's nothing in the way they conceive them that's particularly male or particularly female. So it isn't, I wouldn't say, looking, going on the evidence of the ancient Stoics, that it's particularly either male or female, it's universal. Now, in the ancient world was, dominated by men, like most societies. Most human societies have been dominated by men. We are not, thank goodness, and we don't need to be. So we can apply Stoic ideas in a way that accommodates the desire, the perfectly reasonable desire to bring about equality between men and women and to give women a full role in our society. And there's nothing in Stoicism that makes that at all problematic or difficult because, as I say, it's universal. It's a universal philosophy. And just to give one example of that, for instance, the virtue of courage. They talk of courage as one of the virtues. Now, often in the ancient world, courage was especially associated with going into battle and fighting wars, which traditionally would be a male province, not now, of course. But the Stoics don't define it in that way. The Stoics define courage in terms of, yes, facing danger, but also recognizing what really matters. What are the things we should be frightened of and what we should not be frightened of? So we shouldn't be frightened of death because death is something that will occur anyway. And we should rise above circumstances. And that's a universal quality. So so you can show courage in every kind of context. You can show courage in having a baby, which is fairly tough experience. No, you can show having watched it 4 times, and you can show courage in facing your own death or in other people's death. You can show courage. You can show moral courage if you stand up for what you believe, and you can show courage in having to say difficult things to people when it's necessary. The Stoics would see these all as perfectly valid forms of courage. And you can show wisdom in looking after children or looking after old people or looking after yourself. So it's the universe. Stoicism is a universal philosophy. It's not a gendered philosophy.
Yeah, I love those examples too. They're very, practical, but also they, show courage in what matters and not just, being brave for recreation, like bungee jumping or skydiving or, roller coaster, that kind of bravery. It's
Moral courage is moral courage.
Courage, what matters, the everyday situations.
Much more difficult. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's universal in that way. But I think there is in modern ethical philosophy, modern moral philosophy, there's what is sometimes seen as morality in a female voice is the idea that ethics is about caring, the importance of caring. And I mean, we could say a bit about that, but there's a great deal about care in Stoicism. And indeed, there is a modern movement which Brittany Pollard leads on Stoic care, Stoic care. I don't know.
Yes. Organization.
It's
Yeah.
an organization. And the reason for this, the basis for this in ancient Stoicism is this, that the Stoics have a theory of development, which they call appropriation. And they see our human development as taking two main forms. One is care for yourself, and care for yourself doesn't just mean looking after your body or looking after your money. It also means trying to make yourself a better person, trying to develop ethically, trying to develop a full human life, a worthwhile human life. So that's care for yourself. But the other side is care for others. And the Stoics stress that care for others is a universal, natural quality. Care for others isn't something that has to be forced on us. It's something that's just as natural to us as caring for ourselves. So just as we try and preserve our own life, so it's natural to us to care for others. And the idea that these are equally instinctive. These are equally instinctive. So we don't have to be trained. It isn't that we're naturally selfish and we have to be trained to care for other people. These are both natural impulses. Sorry, I'm going on about this, but it's really...
No, that's okay. Especially in, a lot of Western culture, individualism is emphasized a lot. Like, look out for yourself and do what's best for yourself and don't, be overtaken by the needs of others too much and, that kind of thing. So it's good to hear, from philosophy, ancient philosophy, that no, some of this is wrong. Like we're maybe caring and prioritizing ourselves a little bit too much sometimes. And it's good.
Very much so. I mean, they're just, and I mean, in a way, you can't disconnect these because the Stoics think that you care for yourself by developing the virtues. The virtues are wisdom, courage, moderation, and justice. So these are virtues that you can only express in your relationships. You can only express your relationships. So. But I think that's absolutely right. I mean, I think that's a real insight on the part of Stoicism, and it's a different view of human nature from the views given by some other philosophers. But I think it's a profound one. And I think if we ask ourselves, what sort of human life is it which doesn't have relationships, which doesn't have caring, which doesn't have love? What sort of a life is it?
Yeah.
I mean, you may make, a billion, millions, billions. What, if you're just sitting there surrounded by wealth, what sort of life is that? It's miserable. And indeed, we see this. We see this around us.
And that could be why there's so much loneliness and sadness and, depression in these cultures too. Yeah.
Yes, we are naturally social animals. We need dialogue, we need care, we need concern, because that's the way we are. That's the kind of animal that a human animal is. And the Stoics are very, very, So I think Stoicism really, and all that means there's plenty of scope for women as well as men to practice Stoicism and to do so in a positive way.
Yeah, and I was really happy to have you on here because, as I mentioned, in my first email, obviously you're not, a woman or feminine, but it is important to have allies and, men speak to this too as almost proof or, evidence that, it's not just women saying like, this is for everyone, this is for us too. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for coming on for that.
Very happy to do that. I'm very happy to do that. And I have to say, I find the idea that Stoicism is distinctively male, and in particular that it's distinctively macho male, is really ridiculous. It's just an absurd misinterpretation of the theory. And I guess it is. I think you in some of you. It's a puzzle, really. Well, if you come to it from the ancient evidence, it's a puzzle why anyone should think that. I think there are some possible answers, apart from just misrepresentation, which of course happens all the time. Epictetus is a very popular Stoic writer, and Epictetus has a certain approach to Stoicism. There's one of his discourses 111 is, I don't know if you know it, it's a wonderful discourse, and it's one in which he is talking to a father. He's talking to a father, and his daughter is ill, this father, the person he's talking to. And the father says, "Oh, I'm so worried about my daughter. I can't stay with her. It's making me so anxious. So I've got to go abroad, or I've got to go somewhere. I've got to clear off. I've got to clear off. I've got to go set on holiday in somewhere." I mean, it's just wonderful. And there's this, and Epictetus, has this kind of dialogue where he says, "Well, is that?" And the father says, "That's a natural way to behave. That's very natural that I should be worried in that way. So worried that I can't stay with her."
Oh no.
And Epictetus says, "Well, hang on. Are you sure that's really a natural way to behave? Is that a natural way for a father? Isn't it more natural for a father to stay with the daughter and help to look after her? Wouldn't that be more a natural thing to do?" And he persuades the father into doing this. And it's a wonderful dialogue. I think everyone should read it. Everyone who, especially all those people in the manosphere, I think it's just, that's what Epictetus thinks the natural way to behave for a man is, for a father, is to stay and look after your children. And that's really impressive, because actually in the ancient world, it would be the mother who would be expected to stay. But Epictetus thinks it's the father's job too. So that's really interesting. But Epictetus, although he has, Epictetus can seem rather harsh sometimes, but he has some very, profoundly human things as well.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks for sharing that example. Another great way Stoicism is applied, even in ancient times. So, with Stoicism, there's a lot of talk on, interpreting it thing as indifference, not being super affected emotionally. So in practicing Stoicism and trying to have that Stoic sort of indifference, how does that contrast to passion and actually doing things instead of just letting things be and, kind of having a more lazy...
Okay, so it's a bit, first of all, indifference. I think this idea is it's a difficult idea because it's an unfamiliar idea, isn't it? Indifference. What are they? Indifference. But the Stoics sometimes draw an important distinction between what they call preferred indifference and not preferred indifference. So the Stoics recognize that some things we naturally attracted to, life, health, property, having a good reputation, having a family. There are some aspects of human life, things that are often seen as making up the good life, which are indeed preferred. And they call them preferred because they're things that human beings naturally go towards, they naturally want. So, and the Stoics are not far from denying that. The good life isn't one which you just pile up, things like that in a great heap. The good life is one in which you exercise the virtues in relation to indifference. So you show the virtues of wisdom, courage, justice, and self-control by the way you select between, well, they use this term, select between indifference. You choose to do this rather than that. And in some cases you will choose, life rather than death. In some cases you may, where courage is really required, you might choose to risk your life, and so on. So the virtues, but practicing virtue isn't something completely on its own. It isn't something you do in a kind of vacuum. Practicing the virtues is something you do in relation to what we normally call the indifferent. So it's not just doing things, it's doing them in a way that develops the virtues. And the emotions that they think we should have, that they think we will have, actually, they follow from developing the virtues. That if we develop the virtues, we will, at the same time, we will have certain kind of emotions, what they call good emotions. There are good emotions and not good emotions. Good emotions are things like joy and wish and caution. And these virtues are corollaries. They go along with, they're the kind of emotional qualities that someone has who is a virtuous person. So the virtuous life is not a cold, utterly irrational emotion-free life. It just has the right kind of virtues. There's a kind of joy that goes with being wise or being just. There's a kind of inner coherence and inner calm and inner harmony that goes along with them. But on the other hand, you will avoid what they call the passions, the bad emotions, things like anger, hatred, jealousy, spitefulness, the kind of violent emotions that are the result of regarding as good things that are just preferred indifference. So if you say, well, I want money at all costs, I want money at all, I'm going to do anything, you're going to have all sorts of horrible emotions. You'll just get, or if you say, I want fame at all costs, and we see this every day. We see, I'm not going to name names, but there are leading figures in our society, leading major politicians who want fame. I mean, no names, but who will go for fame and publicity at all costs, and they don't mind what, and you can see their emotions, the emotions of hatred and violence and destruction that are going along with that. So so the Stoics are right that the emotional quality of our life reflects our moral life, our moral understanding. And moral understanding leads to certain kind of emotions, and immoral, a selfish and superficial and brutal kind of life leads to other kinds of emotions. That's what they're trying to say.
Yeah.
So it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, emotions aren't just things on their own. They're things that reflect.
But yeah, like what you said about joy from doing the right thing too. In a lot of modern and Western society, there's this kind of obsession with happiness and joy.
Yes.
But I think with Stoicism, yes, joy and happiness can come from doing the right thing, but that's not.
Exactly.
But it's more like you should do the right thing first, primarily, even if it doesn't always bring you, it's not always, the most.
Or hedonism.
Yeah, it doesn't bring you that kind of joy. So it's not that type of, thrill. But doing the right thing has its own happiness. But you should do the right thing first and then kind of experience the happiness, not doing that end goal.
It's interesting, this idea of happiness. I mean, the Stoics talk about eudaimonia, and the way they define eudaimonia, happiness, is a kind of life. It's a matter of trying to lead a certain kind of life. So happiness for them we think of happiness as a feeling. I feel happy today. I've got feeling, I've got thrill. It's really exciting. But they think of happiness as more living in a certain way. That is, it's a whole way of being and of acting. And
More sustainable and cool.
It's kind of it's more lasting. It's more embedded in your character. It's what you kind of are at some level, at a quite fundamental way. It's a different, but I think you're absolutely right. If you want joy, don't look for joy. Don't look for joy. You don't say, "Well, I really want to be joyful today." just try and live in a normal kind of rational, humane way. Just try it. So there's some lovely Marcus passages like this. He tells himself, what are you waiting around for? Why don't you try the life of a good person? Get on with it. Get on with it.
Stop delaying it. Yeah.
Stop delaying it. Stop delaying it. What are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? Just try to live a good life now.
Love that.
He sort of wraps himself on the knuckle. And it's saying that. To being virtuous, you don't think, oh gosh, what am I going to do today? I'm going to be virtuous. No. You think about what needs to be done. What needs to be done? Who needs help? What do you need to be doing?
Yeah.
What task is there that really requires your attention? You do
that already exists in your life. Yeah.
And then you'll express the virtues. The virtues aren't something like, oh, it's 11 o'clock. I've got to be virtuous. Come on. It's 11 o'clock. You should be helping someone, or you should be doing something, worthwhile.
Yeah.
So that Stoicism expresses
is more down to
earth. They're profound, but in another way, they're quite simple. And I think everyone at some level, the Stoics thought that everyone at bottom has these ideas. They've got these same ideas, but they just don't always recognize them. So being a Stoic isn't just being different from other people. Being a Stoic is just like being other people, but doing it properly.
Yeah.
Leading a good human life.
Yeah, making Stoic choices instead of hedonistic choices, where it's like hedonism is like, yeah, focusing on like pleasure. I guess that's the word.
Pleasure. Yeah, pleasure. I mean, they're not against pleasure, but pleasure they think should follow. You take
Moderation.
in.
Yeah.
Well, also you take pleasure in doing the right thing.
In doing the right thing. Yeah. And moderation. So not, drinking excessively, doing, anything excessively like drugs, sex, all that. One of the first Stoic workshops you had at Exeter, you had some psychologists come in.
Yes. CBT.
So yeah, how does Stoicism affect CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy?
Sure. Yeah. Well, Stoicism, and especially Epictetus, was quite influential on the development of a CBT. Albert Ellis, one of the founders of CBT, or pre-founders, was very influenced by it. And he and Aaron Beck, too, the idea that he really took from Stoicism is the idea that we are emotionally agitated not by events, but by the way we react to events, by our beliefs about events. So it isn't just the fact of danger or disaster or upset that affects us. It's what we believe about it. It's what we believe. So and often we make life much more difficult and problematic for ourselves because we construct ideas that are false and unrealistic, or we form a kind of, we want life to have a kind of rosy glow, and it doesn't. And so I think that was a really a key insight for him. And of course, that was quite different from the kind of Freudian insights that were prevalent in psychotherapy before him. So that's actually very important. I think myself, I have done a little work on this, and I think there's quite a close connection, especially between Epictetus and his approach, and something called ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, which is a branch of CBT. One of the things about acceptance therapy is that you, as it were, accept your own qualities and experiences. You examine them, as Epictetus would say, you examine your impressions.
Without shame.
But just accept, stage one is accepting them. Stage one is just, okay, how do I actually live? What am I, what in reality are the motives which are driving me? And then, having done that, you examine them. You critically evaluate them, and you decide which of those are things that you really want, that stand the test of your critical examination. And sometimes people call about values clarification. It's values clarification, clarifying your values. And then you reach a view about what you should take forward. And then you make a commitment. This is where the commitment, ACT, the commitment to change in some cases. So you accept a great deal of yourself, but then you decide some things are not acceptable, and then you make a commitment to change. And I think that's again very like Epictetus. Epictetus talks a lot about choice and decision, and choosing and deciding that this is the right way to go forward. And I think there's quite a close link then between ACT, and that. That people haven't stressed that so much, but I think it's quite striking.
Yeah.
There are quite close links. And of course, all these are very different from the Freudian ideas that our emotions are all determined by unconscious desires or by experiences we all had when we were babies and we desired our mother and hated our father and so on. I mean, this is quite a different approach. I'm not saying that they're valueless, but it's a very different approach.
Yes, another perspective.
And I think that and of course, the great thing about CBT is that it gives you something you can do. I think the difference between CBT and Stoicism is that CBT is, especially for people who are going through difficulties and troubles, But Stoicism is for everyone, whether or not you're going through difficulties or troubles. It's a universal philosophy, and it can help you in every situation.
Yeah, it helps with your decision making. And for Nisus, I know you edited a journal on that, co-edited. But yeah, it's like about which action, right action
Yes.
to take.
Yes, it's about action. Stoicism is also about act. Stoicism, well, sometimes people talk about Stoicism as if it's kind of passive philosophy, but it's not. It's not like that at all. It's the reverse. It's a philosophy of action,
Right.
but action of different kinds, and also, of course, distinguishing between what you can do and what you can't. This is another important Epictetus principle.
Mhm. Nice. Well, yeah, we covered a lot, and I'm so glad to hear your perspective and opinions. Yeah, as someone who studies philosophy and Stoicism so much in depth. But yeah, I guess I'm gonna wrap this up, and then we can talk a little bit after I stop recording too.
Okay, that's fine. Well, it's been lovely talking to you. I've really enjoyed our discussion. Thank you.
Oh, thank you too, Chris. I appreciate it. I'm still learning how to live more stoically every day. If you are too, then you found the right place. Stay tuned with the Feminine Stoic. And if this resonated with you, maybe share it with someone who needs it too. Thank you.